Have you ever felt anxious the moment a conversation started? Even when you thought you had something meaningful to say, it always felt like your words would fall flat. You could give a satisfying answer, but no one seemed to appreciate it. You'd tell stories, but they felt unheard, like you were talking to a wall. And despite trying to sound warm, people still thought you were cold or distant. You know that feeling when you've said everything right, but it still doesn't feel like enough. People just don't seem to listen. Or worse, they misinterpret your intentions. If you've experienced this, stick around, because in this video, I'm going to share communication techniques that helped me finally overcome these challenges. Like many others in the field, I was a software engineer who excelled at solving problems behind a screen, but struggled with interacting with people. During the meetings, I often stayed silent, worried that my ideas wouldn't come out right. At social gatherings, I felt invisible, unsure how to join conversations. One day, I attended a company event where a senior leader asked me a direct question in front of everyone. My palms got sweaty, my mind went blank. I just muttered a few words, but they made no sense. The silence that followed felt unbearable. That moment was a wake-up call for me. I realized my communication skills were holding me back, not just at work, but in my social life. Determined to improve, I began searching for ways to think faster and communicate smarter. I started small, reading about communication techniques and practicing every day. Over time, I transformed into a confident communicator who could hold his own in any conversation. Well, my success wasn't about becoming a different person. It was about building the skills to express my true self effectively. This is why, in this video, I'm going to share some effective communication techniques and how you can use them to avoid embarrassing situations. Let's dive in. So, the first technique is to get rid of or reduce the anxious feelings so you can unblock yourself and apply everything you've learned. Now, this is how I get rid of it. One day I was walking through a mall and noticed two girls nearby giggling as they passed by. And my mind went crazy, imagining what they were laughing about because I looked weird, or was I ugly? Suddenly, I started to feel anxious, like I wasn't good enough, like I was somehow insufficient as a man, as a living being. But right in that particular moment, it hit me. I realized my anxiety was all about me, about accepting my own mind's negative thoughts and accepting what others thought badly about me too. It was also about me believing I needed to be a perfect man, carefully calculating every word so I'd never make someone feel bad or think I was a weirdo. Yeah, just a life misunderstanding. After that, I stopped letting the negative thoughts and criticisms from my mind and from the people around me to reach my soul. I also stopped worrying so much about whether I might say something that would make others uncomfortable or make them think I'm a weirdo. I started telling myself I look great, and if they can't see my beauty, it doesn't matter. It just means they like different things. On the other hand, when I used to try to calculate my words, I started telling myself if they noticed that I said something odd, they can realize as well it was just a moment of my mind's weirdness. Nobody is perfect. Let it slip away. So this helped cure my anxiety and made me feel more confident. It made my mind calmer and clearer, giving me even more space to think of new ideas. It felt like a game changer, like I ate a Super Mario mushroom and doubled in size, smashing everything around my Titan form. You know, I used to struggle with making my points stick during conversations or presentations. People would listen, but I could tell they weren't fully engaged. That changed when I realized my power of storytelling. It was like discovering a secret ingredient that made everything I said more interesting and memorable. I started practicing how to tell a good story. First, I learned to grab attention with a hook. For example, before diving into a topic, I might ask, "Do you know what makes a conversation unforgettable?" It worked every time. It made people curious and eager to hear more. Then I focused on keeping my stories simple. Instead of sharing every little detail, I stuck to the key moments that really mattered. This kept the story clear and easy to follow. Finally, I made sure every story had a point, whether it was a lesson, an insight, or a takeaway. I ended with something meaningful that people could remember. I noticed that when I told a story, people not only listened, but also connected with what I was saying on a deeper level. It became my go-to strategy for making ideas stick, whether it was in a casual chat or giving a big presentation. This also works when telling your life stories. Just remember this pattern. Hook, the problem you face, solution, benefits. That means what you've learned and the experience, and don't forget to keep it simple. They will love it, even if you don't go into big details. If they're curious enough, they'll ask for more. Moving on to the third one. When I used to think communication was all about finding the right words, but then realized it's so much more than that. A lot of it is about what's not being said. Things like body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice. Once I started paying attention to these nonverbal cues, my conversation completely changed. For example, I began noticing facial expressions. If someone smiled or looked confused, I'd adjust my words and match their emotions. Then I started watching body language. If someone leaned forward, I knew they were interested. But if they crossed their arms, they might be feeling defensive. Even the tone of voice taught me a lot. A warm tone meant they were comfortable, but a sharp or hesitant one showed me that they might need reassurance. When I figured out how to read these signals, responding became so much easier. I remember one time someone seemed hesitant while I was explaining an idea, so I slowed down and clarified my point. Instantly, the tension lifted and the conversation flowed much better. It felt great to connect on a deeper level, just by paying attention to what wasn't being said. Now, if I remember correctly, a few weeks ago I noticed my friend Sarah seemed unusually quiet. We were sitting at our favorite coffee shop, and while I was chatting about my day, she nodded, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. So I asked her, "Hey, you okay?" She shrugged, her eyes fixed on the table, and said, "I'm fine." Instead of pushing her to open up, I decided to give her some space. "It seems like something's bothering you," I said gently. "If you want to talk, I'm here." After a long pause, she sighed and said, "It's just, I've been feeling really stuck lately. Like everything's piling up and I can't keep up. Work, family, everything. I feel like I'm letting people down." Her voice cracked a little, and she looked away, clearly embarrassed. In that moment, I remembered something I'd read about emotional intelligence, the importance of validation. She didn't need advice or a solution. She needed to feel understood. So I said, "I can see why you'd feel that way. You've got so much on your plate, and it seems overwhelming. Anyone would feel like that in your shoes." Her eyes met mine, and I could see her shoulders relax just a little. "It's just hard, you know?" "Totally," I replied. "You're juggling so much, and it's okay to feel like it's too much sometimes. It doesn't mean you're letting anyone down. You're human. Have you been able to take any time for yourself?" That question opened the door for her to share more. She talked about how she felt guilty, even thinking about taking a break, and how it was hard to admit she was struggling. I listened without interrupting, nodding to show I was with her. By the end of the conversation, she looked lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Sometimes people just need to hear, "I understand why you feel that way," to feel seen and supported. The experience with Sarah taught me the power of emotional intelligence. By validating her feelings and being present, I was able to focus on understanding rather than fixing. It strengthened our connection and showed me how empathy can make a big difference. If you like this video, be careful. You might fall into that subscribe trap. See you soon.